evening, tabletop gamers. My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play the 2 to 6 player racing game Hot Rod Creeps by Matt Hyra and published by Cryptozoic Entertainment. In Hot Rod Creeps, every player is a member of a creep racing team, hence the name Hot Rod Creeps, and they're basically going to be racing around a track built by the players, basically trying to get to the finish line while screwing up everybody else by playing cards. Let's get to the table and let's see what's in the box. In order to set up the game, you're going to need to build the track first. The game comes with several of these puzzle piece style tiles that you can use to build a track around, which are double-sided so you can use them interchangeably. So I've just gone ahead and just laid some out to build a generic track for you. Now there are a few guidelines whenever it comes to building the track, but generally as long as you have a starting area like this and a finish line, along with some pit stops along the way, you should be fine. Next, you're going to give each player their racing team. There are 6 different racing teams included with the game. The Rockabilly, the Underworld, the Alien, the Monsters, the Battle Wizards, and the Food Fight, which, fun fact, these 2 are actually references to 2 of Cryptozoic's other games. Players are going to then pick one of those racers, and they're going to basically have that in front of them to represent who they are. Now, each of these racers has their little picture on here, which represents who they are. They also have 4 different slots for upgrades: a weapon, an engine, a wheels, and a pit crew. I'm going to explain what these are a bit later on, so don't worry about these just yet. Each player is then going to receive a deck that matches their character. And this deck is basically going to represent their gas tank. Now, the set of numbers that I have here represents the pole position. This is going to determine what player is going to go first, as well as how many cards each player is going to start with when they start the game. Now, in order to determine which player starts the game, you're going to need to determine amongst the players who has the closest birthday to the date that you're playing the game going forward. The remaining players would then be placed in the pole position in a random order. Now, it's highly encouraged that with this order, players sit accordingly to the left of the starting player to make it easier to determine who goes next. Now, like I said, the order that you get set in is determining how many cards you get at the start of the game. So for the first 2 players, they will get 2 cards. The second 2 players, or 3 and 4th player, if you're doing a 3 or 4 player game, will get 3 cards, and the final 2 positions will get 4 cards. If you decide to set this game up with corners, which are represented by this red line here on the tiles, you need to take a token that looks similar to this. It'll have a corner with a number plus on it, and you need to take one of those and put it on every single corner piece that you have laid out on the track. I'll explain what these are a little bit later. Now, the last 2 parts of the setup are completely optional. You don't have to do either of these if you don't want to. I'm just going to do it for the sake of this tutorial so that you can better understand. So the first thing you need to understand are the little hazard tokens. These are road hazards. They're basically the backside of the corner tokens, and basically all you do to set them up, you just take them and you just put them on random spots on the track. It doesn't really matter where you place them. They're basically just meant to hinder you and your opponents. There's also a standee of these rowdy fans that comes with the game. You can just set this next to the track. It doesn't matter where you put it because it doesn't do anything. It's just there for thematic purposes. Same thing with this little stand here that says the title of the game. You can just do whatever you want with it. It doesn't matter. It's just there to help other people understand what game you're playing. Once you've done all the setup and everyone has their starting hands, the race can begin. On your turn, there are 4 different things you can do, and you are going to choose one of those things. You can either play a move card from your hand, play the top card of your deck, or your tank rather, play the top card of a nitro deck, or draw 4 cards from the top of your tank. If you choose to play a move card, you're going to look at your hand of cards and choose which one you're going to play. Each card has 2 bits of information you need to know. The movement value up in the corner, and on the bottom is an event that will happen when you play the card. Now, when you play one of these cards, you always resolve the event first, because the event sometimes can impact how far you actually will move. So for the case of slow and steady here, I play this card to my discard pile, and I will get to draw a move card, and then I will get to move 2 spaces. considering that is the value on the card. So what I will do is I will draw a move card from my deck, add it to my hand, and then I will go 1, 2. An important thing to know that if you play a move card that has an event on it that can't trigger, you can still move the value on the card, the event just won't happen. So it's almost as if you're just playing a blank number card. So in the case of this one, if you're in last place, you can move 6 instead. Well, obviously that's not going to happen because I'm in first right now. So essentially, it acts as if I just played a move of 3. Another important thing to note is that there are some cards that will have keywords on them, meaning that their events will only trigger when that certain thing is done. For example, this card here has the hand only. That means this event will only trigger if you were to play this as a card from your hand. Whereas this other card here, flip only, that means that the event can only be done if you were to flip this card off the top of your deck. And speaking of flipping, another action you can do on your turn is to flip the top card of your tank. Essentially what you're going to do is to take the top card, you flip it over, and that is the card you're playing on your turn. Essentially, you're taking a shot in the dark. The third way to move on your turn is to use Nitro. There is a Nitro deck included with the game, and essentially what you're going to do with it is the same way you're doing as if you were to flip the top card of your tank. You take the top card, you flip it over, and that is your movement for the turn. These cards often will have massive movement stats. I mean, just look at these. 7, 9, 6, 7, 9, 8. But it's a bit of a risk to use these because most likely they will come with a penalty. For example, this one here, you can move 8 spaces, but you take 2 damage on your card. Or this one, you take 6 damage. Or this one, you can destroy one of your upgrades on your car. Or, even in the rare case, you won't even be able to move at all. And you basically just wasted your turn. But that's the thing with the Nitro deck. It's essentially a do you feel lucky type of scenario. The last action you can take on your turn is to draw 4 cards. Now essentially all you gotta do is you just take your deck, take the top 4 cards off your deck, and you add them to your hand. Now keep in mind, when you do this, you're basically giving up moving for that turn in order to fill your hand back up. And that's the very basic rules of the game, but there are several things you're going to need to know before you're ready to start playing this yourself. There is a maximum limit of 1 racer per space. Nobody is allowed to stop on anybody. So let's say this person ended up moving and ended up having to stop his movement on this racer. Well, obviously he can't do that because there's 2 racers there, so he has to draft him. To do that, you basically just take your racer and you move it to the first empty spot in front of that racer that you're drafting. And so for another example, let's say this racer, he moves his spaces, lands on this one, he can't do that, so he drafts ahead, nope, somebody on there. He drafts ahead again, no racers on there, he stops there instead. Anytime a racer moves over someone else, then that means they've passed them. I know I'm starting to sound like a kindergarten teacher now, but it's important I bring this up, because there are some card effects that will trigger whenever you pass another hot rod. There are several moments in the game where you will be forced to burn cards off of your tank. What that means is you basically are being forced to waste part of your gas. When you're forced to burn cards off of your tank, you basically take the number of cards from the top of your tank and you basically discard them. Now if you are to take a burn effect but there's not enough cards left in your deck to burn off, you burn off all the cards that you have remaining. If you have to burn cards off of your tank but you don't have anything left, then basically nothing happens. Damage is an effect that is very similar to burn. However, unlike burn, where the damage will just come from your tank, when you take damage, you actually have to remove cards from your hand first, and then if you don't have any cards left but you still need to take damage, then it will come off the top of your deck. Keep in mind, you have to have all the cards in your hand discarded before you can start taking cards off your deck to satisfy the damage. Every part of the track that has a red line in the middle is a corner. And every corner has a token next to it with a number and a effect on it. Now what this means is that if you were to pass the middle of the line with a card that has that value or larger, then that means you've gone around the corner too fast and you're going to suffer the penalty from the token. For instance, if I were to play a 4 when I go around this corner, then that means I've gone too quick and I take 2 damage. Or if I've gone around this with a 5 or 6 or higher, then I take 1 damage. Or if I go around this corner with a 3 or higher, then I have to destroy one of my upgrades. Now in order to determining if you've gone around the curve too quick, you basically have to look at the number on the top left card, and if it meets or exceeds the value on the corner, then you have sped over the curve. Keep in mind, the speed of the car is determined by the value of the card you've played, not the amount of spaces that you've moved. At the start of your turn, if you have no cards left in your tank and no cards left in your hand, you have run out of gas. When you run out of gas, you have to take your marker and move it all the way back to the closest empty pit stop from where you are. For example, let's say I ran out of gas when I was right here. Well, if that's the case, the closest empty pit stop spot to me is here. So that means I would have to take my marker and move it all the way back to here. Now when that happens, you also are not allowed to move that turn. You've basically skipped your turn to go back to the pit stop. Speaking of pit stops, if you were to land your hot rod on one of the opening pit stop spots, you then get 2 options. You can either gas up your car, which basically means you take your discard and put it back onto your deck, and basically you get a full deck again, or you can take an upgrade. There's 4 upgrades that you can get in the game: the weapons, the engine, the wheels, and the pit crew. And these will give you different benefits depending on what happens. The weapon will basically allow you to attack other players and forcing them to get rid of cards. The engine will allow you to move faster when you play a move card or nitro. The wheels will allow you to get extra distance when you draft someone. And the pit crew will give you extra benefits when you use the pit stop. To apply an upgrade, you basically just take the top card of the upgrade stack that you chose and you place it in the appropriate spot for it. You can only have 1 upgrade of each type, but you are allowed to basically replace the upgrade with another one if you so wish. The jump is 2 included hazards that come with the game that are also used as part of the track. They comprise of the Flaming Ring of Fire or the Shark Tank. You can use these interchangeably with each other, or you can add them both if you want. Now in order to make the jump, you have to make it from the launch pad to the end pad in one go. If you land on either of these 2 spots, you take the penalty for it and you fall yourself back 1 to 3 spaces before the jump. The first hot rod who makes it past the finish line is the winner. And that is everything you need to know in order to play Hot Rod Creeps. As always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will get back to them. Thank you all as always so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. That really means a lot to me. If you like what I do and you want to support me in the future, please feel free to hit subscribe. And I will see you all in the next video. But until next time, see you.